It's the Bob Barbara Show. Coming your way with a smile today. Down the humorous path with a lark and a laugh. It's the Barbara Show. The the Barbara Show. Welcome to Humorous Adventures with Barbara.
Well, welcome again to the Humorous Adventures with Barbara. Today's topic is boyfriends. Now, everybody in my family is tall. My father, my mother, my brothers, but not me. And my mother growing up, when she was in high school and she would meet boys, they would be at a dance and the boy would come up like to here. That's why tall was a big criteria for my mother. So anytime I met a new guy, she would ask me, is he tall? And I'd go, Ma, everybody's taller than me. Now, I didn't really want to talk to my mother about boyfriends, in high school because, you didn't tell your mother stuff like that. I was cool, really cool. But I knew she wanted to be my best friend, which would mean, I have to be open about everything. So after I graduated college, I decided I would give her one story. And if she was cool with that, then I would open up the floodgates and talk about all my stories. So we would go out to lunch and dinner. And one time at lunch, we're talking, and I happen to be talking about one of my boyfriends and what we were doing, when out of the corner of my eye, I could see this older couple listening. And so I decided it's going to be fun to embellish the story. So as I'm telling my mother the story, I embellish it a little bit more, and I can see these two older people are leaning in and talking amongst each other. They almost fell off their chair listening to us. And my mother and I, my mother got it, and it was very, very funny for us. But it's funny. I would tell my friends, yeah, I told my mother that. And my friends would say, you told your mother? And I would tell my mother, yeah, I tell my friends that. And my mother said, you tell your friends that? There's nothing wrong with it. So they're dating stories and things like that. So yes, I'm an open book. What can I say? Now, we're talking about boyfriends. So I already alluded to the fact that my first love was Tony. And then there've been other boyfriends. But Brian was the younger brother of my brother's best friend. And I had a crush on Brian. So in confidence, I told my mother that I thought Brian was very cute. And then just a couple of days later, phone rings and it's Brian and he's asking me out. So I agreed, but I thought, my mother broke a confidence and she told my brother to have Brian ask me out. And I'm not a charity date. I don't need help. So I went to my mother and I said, why did you have Danny ask Brian ask me out? That's very embarrassing. And my mother said, I didn't. And I didn't believe her. And I'm crying. And I ran in my room when my brother comes home and he said, what's the commotion about? And my mother tells him. And he just starts laughing, this belly laugh. He's so happy. And why he's happy is he doesn't want me dating Brian, because if Brian was to do anything to me, he's got to protect his sister. My brother's my protector, and he would have to defend my honor. So he loved the fact that Brian and I wouldn't get together. Anyway, I did go out with Brian, and on this date, Brian picks me up, and as we're driving to the restaurant, we just felt that Danny was a presence in between us. We get to the restaurant. I'm nervous. I can see he's nervous. And I look at the menu and I order chicken. Okay, chicken. And the waitress looks at me and says, do you know how to eat it? And I'm thinking, okay, this is nerve-wracking enough to be on this first date with a guy that I'm attracted to, but oh, I'm nervous. And the waitress now is asking me if I know how to eat chicken. What? Do I look like a moron? But this is all I'm thinking inside my head. And then the waitress says, "Oh, I can see you have a perplexed look on your face. The reason I'm asking you if you know how to eat chicken is this is chicken Kiev, and if you were to stick your fork or your knife in it fast, maybe some oil would shoot in your face." Well, okay. But needless to say, the relationship between me and Brian did not go too far with that one. Another boyfriend was John. And John was an aspiring actor. But how he would make a living was to drive limousines. And in between gigs, John would pick up me and my friends to go to different parties. It was a lot of fun. And maybe it was my birthday one night. Here's a picture of me getting into a limousine with a big bouquet of roses. And what happened was, I get in the limousine with the roses, and I'm in the front seat with John. We pick up some of my other friends, and I turned around from the front seat to talk to my friends when they were playing with the partition in the limousine, and the partition went up. My roses were midway, and all the tops of the roses got cut off. So now I'm left with a beautiful bouquet of stems, whatever. Here's a picture of me and John at a Halloween party. Do you recognize me? You know, I love the fact that I could wear this wig with long black hair because I never had hair that I could go and here's a picture showing that. Now, I never miss a photo opportunity, and I was at a club and they happened to have these cutouts, cardboard cutouts of Bartles and James. And so I walked up to Bartles and James and, pretending to plant a kiss on one of them. And here's a picture of that. I don't know. I just thought it was a cute photo op. Now, when I moved to California, I called it La Jolla, but I now know it's pronounced La Jolla, okay? And I met an attorney, and my mother loved the fact that now I'm dating an attorney. And he would take me to real fancy restaurants, and, when wine would come to the table, he would taste it, and a lot of times he would send it back. I mean, wine can't be that bad at a lot of restaurants. I think he just wanted to show me that he was some kind of wine connoisseur. And then also, he never asked me to pay for all these dinners, but he kind of always wanted me to see, how much he paid. And one of his claim to fame was, and he told me this story a number of times, and I don't mind people repeating a story that they're proud of themselves, but I, after a while, could recite this story. His claim to fame was that he represented a famous actress's husband while they were going through a divorce. Now, one time, he asked me for Halloween to get dressed up, and we were going to go to a baseball game in San Diego and then go to a Halloween party. And he decided that he's going to rent a gorilla suit, and I decided to once again fit into one of my dancing costumes when I was a little girl. I would just wear a black leotard underneath not to expose myself. That morning, somehow, I had half a gallon of grapefruit juice. I dropped it on my toe. It didn't break, but it really hurt my toe, and my toe swelled up. But I managed to stick my foot in my high heel shoe and dress up like a crazy. I opened the door expecting him to be in his gorilla suit, and he's wearing just a Hawaiian shirt. I said, "Where's the gorilla suit?" He said, "Oh, I decided not to." I'm like, "Well, look at me." He said, "Oh, come on, let's go." So we go to the baseball game, and he says, "Don't worry, everybody in San Diego has spirit. They're all going to be dressed up." And guess what? The only people dressed up at this baseball game was me and their mascot, the San Diego Chicken. Here's a picture of the chicken. Well, I thought then and there, this guy, I don't know, I don't think this was a match made in heaven. I have to move on. And I dated this guy that I had thought had a full head of hair. And after a couple of dates, I guess, he was over my house and we start kissing and I have my hand in his hair and then somehow it felt and it lifted off and now the man I'm kissing is bald and I'm in my hand, I've got his hair and I threw it. It'd be okay if I'd met him and he was bald in the first place, but to be kissing somebody and then pulling his hair off is kind of freaky. Now, I did try internet dating, but my thing was, I don't know who these guys are, and I wouldn't even commit to dinner or lunch or anything. The way I wanted to do it is I would meet in a restaurant that I knew all the people there, and one glass of wine. That way, after the glass of wine, I'm not offending him, and I could leave because there's no commitment. I don't owe him for lunch. I don't feel bad. And a lot of times, too, guys would put pictures that they were 10 years younger than they were. So I just didn't want to correspond via phone, email. I just wanted to meet in person, and then we'd know if there was chemistry. So I would go to the same restaurant near me. I would get there early, order a glass of wine, sit at the bar, and tell all the bartenders, and it got to be a regular show for them. They'd see the guy come in, and then they'd watch and see if it was going to be a match or not. So I kind of entertained the whole bar. But one day, I met Tony, and after meeting him and talking for a while, I said to him, I feel like ordering another glass of wine. Do you know what that means? And he said, oh, well, I guess you must like me. And I said, yes. So Tony and I decided, okay, because Tony looked how he was supposed to look. He was very nice. So we go on our next first date. Our next first date is going to Santa Cruz and Capitola. And we had walked all around, parked the car, walked all around. He took me to a beautiful restaurant. But then he realized he had to put more money in the meter. And because Santa Cruz and Capitola was about 45 minutes away from where I lived, he wanted me to feel comfortable if he was leaving me at the restaurant to put money in the meter, that he wouldn't drive away and leave me there. So he gave me his wallet to hold, knowing he's not going to go anywhere if I have his wallet. So he leaves, and we had ordered 2 glasses of wine, and I was going to wait for him to come back. When the minute he leaves, I turn and hit the full glass of wine that was sitting on the bar. I hit it. The wine goes crashing down on the floor, but before it does, it spills all down my leg. So this leg is totally soaked. The bartenders fix it up. I try to dry my leg as fast as I can, and it looks normal. I have another glass of wine. When he comes back, he starts talking to me, and then, of all things, he puts his hand on my thigh, and it's soaking wet. And he knows it's soaking wet, and I know it's soaking wet, and I didn't know whether I should say anything. And I had to come clean and tell him what happened. Again, I can never get away with anything. But in closing, I just want to say, how we always remember our first love? My first love was Tony, and he was there at my 10-year reunion when I went back to Boston, and it was like a time warp when he took me back to my friend's house, but we stopped, and we were kissing just like it was back 10 years ago. But it was just a little interlude. But I have to say that I'm still wearing the ring that he gave me when he asked me to go steady when I was 14. And on a sad note, Tony died of cancer a few years ago. However, he'll always have a place in my heart because you can never forget your first love.
It's the Barbara Show. It's the Barbara Show. coming your way with a smile today. Down the humorous path with a lark and a laugh. It's the Barbara Show. The ba ba ba, the ba ba.